The terraforming monitors chimed their daily alerts as Meridian stared out across the rust-colored landscape of Proxima Centauri b, a world slowly being coaxed into habitability. 6 months into his 3-year contract, the isolation was beginning to wear on him. The colonial outpost of New Horizon housed 83 people, but as the only terraforming specialist assigned to the Northern Quadrant, spent most of his days alone in his remote monitoring station. Station 6 reporting nominal atmospheric conversion rates, he spoke into his comm system, watching as his breath fogged slightly in the climate-controlled dome. Outside, the air was still thin and cold, barely breathable for short periods. Requesting permission for perimeter check of sectors 7 through 12. Permission granted, Meridian, came the clipped response from Central Command. Standard protocols apply. Report any anomalies immediately. Smiled ruefully at the familiar warning. Anomalies. As if anything interesting ever happened out here. He suited up methodically, checking the oxygen levels and temperature regulation of his environment suit before stepping into the airlock. As the outer door hissed open, the alien landscape greeted him, a vista of copper-hued plains stretching toward distant mountains, interrupted only by the gleaming silver towers of atmospheric converters. He climbed aboard his rover, a utilitarian vehicle designed for the harsh conditions, and set out toward the perimeter stations. The solitude had become both his comfort and his burden. After the disaster at Europa Station that had cost dozens of lives and his reputation, this assignment was both punishment and second chance. Few wanted to work the lonely outposts of a barely habitable world, which made perfect for the job. The first 5 monitoring stations showed nothing unusual, their readings a slightly tedious confirmation that the terraforming process was proceeding exactly as the mathematical models predicted. As he approached the 6th station, however, something caught his eye, a dark scar across the landscape, like a wound in the rusty soil. Slowed the rover, frowning. Central, I'm picking up signs of disturbance near Station 6. Possible meteorite impact. Acknowledged, Meridian. Maintain safe distance and send visual data. He guided the rover closer, activating the high-resolution cameras mounted on the vehicle. But as the image clarified, his heart rate quickened. Central, this isn't a meteorite. I'm looking at what appears to be a crashed vessel. Small, possibly single occupant. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Non-standard design. I don't recognize the configuration. The silence from Central Command lasted several seconds too long. Secure the site, Meridian. Do not approach the vessel. Security team is being dispatched. Knew what that meant. New Horizon colony operated under strict isolation protocols. The colonial government maintained that humanity needed to secure its foothold before engaging with other potential civilizations. Rumors circulated among the colonists about previous encounters, none of them ended well for the non-humans. He brought the rover to a stop 50 meters from the crash site. The vessel was unlike anything in Earth's fleet, smooth, with an iridescent outer shell that seemed to shift colors as clouds passed overhead. It was remarkably intact for something that had clearly made a forced landing, suggesting advanced materials or technology beyond human capabilities. The rational course would be to wait for the security team. They'd arrive in approximately 40 minutes, weapons ready, prepared to contain whatever might have arrived on their developing world. Checked his oxygen levels again and made a decision he knew might cost him everything. Central, I'm experiencing some comm interference. Maybe related to the crash site. I'll retreat to a safe distance and monitor. He switched his personal comm to local mode only, cutting the direct feed to Central Command. Without allowing himself to reconsider, approached the crashed vessel on foot. As he drew closer, he could see that part of the hull had been breached. Someone, had already exited the craft. A trail of disturbed soil led away from the vessel toward a cluster of rock formations that had been left intact during the initial terraforming. Following the trail, moved cautiously between the towering red stones until he found what he was looking for, and felt his world shift irrevocably. Huddled against the rock wall was a being unmistakably not human. Slender, with skin that shimmered with an opalescent quality similar to the vessel, the creature had 2 arms and 2 legs in roughly humanoid configuration, but there the similarities ended. Its face featured large, almond-shaped eyes that appeared solid black until they caught the light, revealing deep violet irises. No visible nose, but delicate gill-like structures pulsed along its neck. Instead of hair, fine tendrils floated gently around its head as if suspended in water, despite the thin Proxima air. The being was clearly injured. A dark fluid that shimmered with an almost metallic quality seeped from a wound in its side. When it saw Dash, it pressed back against the stone, a sound like chiming crystals emanating from it. Dash raised his hands slowly, palms outward. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, knowing the words were meaningless to the creature but hoping his tone might convey his intention. The being's tendrils rippled, changing from a pale lilac to a deeper purple. One slender hand pressed against its wound while the other reached out, palm up, in what seemed an eerily similar gesture to Dash's own. Making a decision that would change his life forever, Dash unclasped his helmet and pulled it off. The air was thin and cold, but breathable for short periods. He wanted the alien to see his face, to recognize him as a living being. The creature's eyes widened, the violet of its irises expanding as it studied Dash's features with evident curiosity. The sound it made changed, becoming softer, almost musical. Dash tapped his chest. "Dash," he said clearly. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he pointed to the being. The creature seemed to understand the question. It touched its own chest with long, slender fingers. "Novali," it said, the word sounding like water over stones. "Novali," Dash repeated, then glanced over his shoulder. The security team would arrive soon, and he knew their protocols. First contact situations were to be handled with maximum caution, a euphemism for armed response. Looking back at the injured alien, at Novali, Dash made a split-second decision that would violate every colonial regulation. He couldn't leave this being to the mercies of security forces trained to shoot first. "I need to get you somewhere safe," he said, then pointed to her wound and mimicked pain, followed by a helping gesture. Novali's tendrils shifted to a lighter shade, and she nodded, a surprisingly human gesture that suggested either remarkable coincidence or previous observation of humans. With careful movements, Dash helped Novali to her feet. She was lighter than he expected, her body temperature noticeably warmer than a human's. The musical sounds she made shifted in tone, suggesting pain. "Sorry," Dash murmured, supporting her weight against his side. "We need to hurry." He guided her toward his rover, mind racing to formulate a plan. The monitoring station was too obvious, it would be the first place security would look once they discovered the empty spacecraft. But there was an old emergency shelter from the initial colonization phase, partially buried by a landslide and marked as decommissioned in the colonial records. Few remembered it existed. As they reached the rover, Dash helped Novali into the passenger compartment, sealing it to provide her with a more oxygen-rich environment. She watched his movements with those unsettling violet eyes, tendrils now shifting between shades of purple and blue. Dash climbed into the driver's seat and activated the rover's systems, deliberately disabling the location tracker, another violation that could end his career or worse. "Hold on," he told Novali, knowing she couldn't understand. "I'm about to break every rule in the book for you, and I have no idea why." But as he navigated the rover away from the crash site, taking a circuitous route toward the abandoned shelter, Dash realized that wasn't entirely true. He knew exactly why he was risking everything for this alien being. After the disaster at Europa, after watching colleagues die because of bureaucratic decisions that prioritized profit over lives, he couldn't stand by and watch another sentient being treated as a threat simply for existing. As the security team's shuttles appeared on the horizon behind them, Dash accelerated across the rusty plains, leaving a trail of dust that would soon be obscured by the constant winds. Beside him, Novali made a sound like singing, her tendrils now a calm blue that somehow conveyed trust. Dash had spent 6 months in isolation, atoning for sins that weren't entirely his. Now, in the most unexpected way possible, he was no longer alone. And whatever came next, colonial punishment, interspecies conflict, or something entirely unforeseen, he knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. The abandoned shelter appeared ahead, half buried in the copper soil of this alien world. As Dash helped Novali from the rover, her warm hand gripping his arm, their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding that transcended language and biology. They were both, in their own ways, castaways. And now, for better or worse, their fates were intertwined. 3 weeks had passed since Dash had smuggled Novali into the abandoned emergency shelter. The terraforming specialist had managed to maintain his regular duties while making frequent, equipment checks that allowed him to visit his alien guest without arousing suspicion. Each day was a careful dance of deception, each night filled with worry that he would return to find colonial security had discovered his secret. The shelter itself was little more than a reinforced bunker, partially buried under rusty soil and rock from an early terraforming explosion. Solar panels, hastily cleaned and repaired by Dash, provided minimal power for life support and basic amenities. It wasn't comfortable, but it was safe, a hidden pocket in the slowly transforming world of Proxima Centauri b. Dash keyed in the entry code and stepped inside, the airlock hissing as it cycled. Novali, he called softly, the name now familiar on his tongue. She emerged from the small sleeping area, her tendrils shifting to a warm gold color that Dash had come to recognize as pleasure. In the past weeks, he'd learned that the filaments surrounding her head weren't merely decorative, they were highly sensitive organs that changed color with her emotional state. Dash, Novali replied, her voice musical despite speaking a human word. You bring food? Her progress with English had been remarkable. At first, they had communicated through gestures and drawings, but Novali possessed an extraordinary ability to absorb language. She explained, as best she could, that her species, the Lumini, communicated primarily through color patterns and harmonics, but were natural linguists. I brought food, Dash confirmed, placing his backpack on the small table. And something else. He produced a tablet from his jacket, its screen dark. Colony regulation strictly prohibited sharing technology with non-humans, another rule he was breaking, but it was necessary. The tablet contained linguistic programs he'd modified to help Novali learn faster, plus data about human civilization that might help her understand her situation. The wound is better, Novali said, gesturing to her side where the metallic-looking blood had once seeped from a gash. The injury had healed with surprising speed, leaving a shimmering line that was barely visible against her opalescent skin. Good. That's good. Dash busied himself unpacking protein rations and purified water. Fortunately, Novali's physiology could process most human foods, though she preferred fruits and liquids. The security teams have stopped searching the crash area. They've taken parts of your ship to the research facility. Novali's tendrils darkened to a deep indigo, concern, or perhaps fear. They study Lumini technology. Trying to, Dash nodded. But from what I've heard, they can't make sense of it. The materials, they're unlike anything we've developed. He didn't mention the rumors he'd overheard about enhanced interrogation protocols should any alien life forms be discovered. The colonial government's paranoia about non-human intelligence had only grown stronger after an incident 2 years ago on one of Saturn's moons. The details were classified, but the resulting policy was clear: alien contact was to be treated as a threat until proven otherwise. Novali sat across from him, her movements graceful despite the confined space. I must tell you why I am here. Her tendrils shifted between purple and blue patterns as she searched for words. It is difficult with this language. Dash activated the tablet and opened a drawing program. Show me, if that helps. Over the next hour, through a combination of simple English phrases, drawings, and the color patterns of her tendrils, Novali revealed her story. The Lumini weren't explorers, they were refugees. Their home system had been destabilized by a cosmic event she couldn't adequately describe. What remained of their civilization was now nomadic, searching for compatible worlds. My ship, small scout, she explained, tracing the outline of a vessel on the tablet. I search for places safe for my people. Dash frowned. But our colony, the air isn't even fully breathable yet. Novali's tendrils rippled in what he'd come to recognize as a form of laughter. Lumini adapt. We change to fit world. Not like humans who change world to fit them. The implication was clear and oddly humbling. While humans terraformed planets at enormous expense to make them habitable, the Lumini had evolved or developed technology to adapt themselves instead. There are more coming? Dash asked, suddenly concerned about the implications. If a refugee fleet arrived, the colonial response would be immediate and likely brutal. Novali's tendrils darkened. No. I signal first, if safe. She touched her neck where the gill-like structures pulsed. Beacon, broken in crash. Relief mixed with an unexpected disappointment in Dash's chest. Part of him had hoped there might be more beings like Novali, fascinating, gentle creatures with technology that seemed almost magical in its advancement. The colonial government wouldn't welcome them anyway, he admitted. They're afraid of, well, anything different. Novali studied him with those deep violet eyes. But you are not afraid. Why? The question struck him with unexpected force. Why had he risked everything for this alien being? It wasn't just compassion or rebellion against colonial policies. I've seen what fear does, he finally said. At Europa Station, before I came here. I was working on the oxygen reclamation systems. Management knew there were flaws, but fixing them would delay the project. Cost money. His voice tightened. 27 people died when the system failed. I tried to warn them. Novali reached across the table, her slender fingers touching his hand. Her skin was warmer than human temperature, almost feverish, but the contact was soothing. Her tendrils shifted to a soft lavender. You have sadness memory, she said softly. Like my people. We lose much. Home. Family. But we continue. Something in her simple statement eased a tension Dash hadn't realized he'd been carrying. She understood loss in a way few humans could. Their moment of connection was shattered by the harsh beep of Dash's comm unit. He pulled his hand away reluctantly and checked the message. Mandatory gathering at Central Command, he read aloud, feeling his stomach tighten. All personnel required to attend. Security briefing. Novali's tendrils paled to an almost white color, alarm. They find me? I don't know, Dash admitted. But I need to go or they'll get suspicious. He stood, already calculating how much time he had before his absence would be noticed. Stay here. Keep the door sealed. I'll return as soon as I can. As he prepared to leave, Novali caught his arm. Dash, be careful. My people, we sense intentions. Some humans at your colony have darkness thoughts. The phrasing sent a chill through him. I'll be careful, he promised. The Central Command hall was filled with nearly every colonist, the air thick with tension and whispered speculation. Dash found a spot at the back, nodding to a few fellow technicians but avoiding conversation. Director Harlow, a stern woman whose dedication to colonial regulations was legendary, stood at the front, flanked by security officers. 2 weeks ago, she began without preamble, an unidentified object crashed in the northern quadrant. Initial investigation suggested it was a small vessel of non-human origin. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Though the existence of alien life was theoretically accepted, actual contact was rare enough to be shocking. The vessel has been partially salvaged and is being studied, Harlow continued. However, evidence suggests the craft had an occupant that survived the crash. This occupant is now at large on our colony world. Images appeared on the large screen behind her, the crash site, traces of the metallic substance Dash recognized as Novali's blood, footprints that had been enhanced by imaging technology. We have reason to believe, Harlow's voice hardened, that the alien intruder may have had assistance from within our community. Dash kept his expression neutral despite the way his heart hammered against his ribs. Had they found evidence of the rover's passage? Some trace of his presence at the crash site? All personnel are hereby directed to report any unusual activity or sightings immediately. Additionally, there will be increased security screenings and habitat inspections beginning tomorrow. This is a matter of colonial safety, not scientific curiosity. Her gaze swept the room with cold authority. Need I remind you all that first contact protocols are clear? Any non-human intelligence is to be contained and evaluated before any communication is attempted. The individual who has potentially aided this creature has endangered every person in this colony. The meeting continued, but Dash barely heard the remaining announcements. His mind raced with contingency plans. The habitat inspections would include his quarters and monitoring station. While he'd been careful to leave no evidence of Novali there, increased surveillance would make his visits to the emergency shelter nearly impossible. As the gathering dispersed, he found himself face to face with Jana Weller, a fellow terraforming technician assigned to the Eastern Quadrant. "Exciting stuff," she said, her expression unreadable. "Actual aliens. Who'd have thought?" "Probably just a probe," Dash replied, aiming for casual dismissal. "Automated technology." Jana's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not what security believes. Wilson told me they found biological residue. Blood, he thinks." Dash shrugged. "You know how Wilson exaggerates." "Maybe." Jana studied him a moment longer. "You work that sector, don't you? The crash site was near your monitoring station." "I was the one who reported it," Dash acknowledged, knowing that denying public information would only raise suspicion. "Just looked like a meteor impact at first." Jana seemed about to say something more when Director Harlow's voice cut through their conversation. "Meridian. A word." Dash nodded to Jana and approached the director, maintaining what he hoped was an expression of mild professional interest. "You discovered the crash site," Harlow stated rather than asked. "And you initially reported communication interference." "Yes, ma'am. The area showed unusual readings. I maintained safe distance as per protocol." Her cold eyes studied him. "Your monitoring station is closest to the site. Have you noticed any unusual activity since the crash?" "Nothing beyond the security team searching the area," Dash replied evenly. "Your personnel file indicates you were reassigned here after the Europa incident," Harlow said, changing tactics abruptly. "Some might consider that relevant." Dash felt a flare of anger but kept his voice steady. "I follow protocols now, Director. I learned that lesson. See that you remember it." She turned away, dismissing him. "All habitat inspections begin at 0800 tomorrow. Be prepared." Dash waited until well after midnight, when the colony's activities had quieted, before making his way to the rover bay. Security patrols had indeed increased, but he knew the patterns: 3 minutes between eastern perimeter checks, a blind spot near the auxiliary power units. He was halfway to the emergency shelter when he noticed the light on his rover's control panel. A tracking alert had been activated. Someone was monitoring his movements. Swearing under his breath, Dash diverted course, heading toward terraforming Station 8, a legitimate destination that would explain his nighttime journey. He completed a quick systems check at the station before returning to the colony, mind racing. The next day passed in excruciating slowness. The inspection of his quarters was thorough but revealed nothing. He maintained his routine, careful not to show the growing anxiety that threatened to overwhelm him. He had no way to warn Novali, no way to know if she was safe in the shelter. As night fell again, Dash knew he couldn't risk taking the rover. Instead, he packed emergency supplies in a small backpack, claiming he was doing overnight monitoring at Station 5. Then, under cover of darkness, he set out on foot across the rust-colored landscape. The journey took nearly 3 hours, dangerous in the thin atmosphere, even with his environment suit. When he finally reached the shelter, he found the entry pad dark, the power disabled. Panic surged through him as he manually overrode the lock, fearing what he might find inside. The airlock cycled with agonizing slowness, and when the inner door finally opened, he saw only darkness. "Novali," he whispered, activating his suit light. Movement came from the shadows, and suddenly she was there, tendrils swirling with colors he'd never seen her display before, patterns shifting too quickly to interpret. "They came," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Human searchers. I hid in the thermal vent." She pointed to a narrow maintenance shaft that ran beneath the shelter. "They disabled power. Left trackers." Dash quickly located and destroyed the surveillance devices left behind. "They're searching everything now. It's not safe for you here anymore." "Not safe for you either," Novali replied, her tendrils settling into a pattern of deep blue concern. "They suspect you." "Maybe." He began restoring the shelter's power systems. "I can't stay long. They're tracking the rovers now, so I came on foot." Novali touched his arm, her fingers warm through the material of his suit. "Dash, why do you help me? The risk is great." The question she'd asked before, but now with greater urgency. Dash paused in his work, looking into those alien eyes that had somehow become familiar, even dear to him. "Because it's right," he said simply. "Because you're not a threat. Because." He hesitated, uncertain how to express the complex emotions that had developed over their weeks together. "Because I care what happens to you." Her tendrils shifted to a color he'd never seen before, a rich, deep rose with gold highlights at the tips. "In my language," she said softly, "this color means connection. Bond between souls." The implications of her words hung in the air between them, neither human nor alien willing to define more precisely what that connection might mean. Instead, Dash returned to practical matters. "We need to move you somewhere they won't think to look," he said. "The old mining excavation in Sector 12 might work. It's officially decommissioned, radiation warnings keep people away, though the actual levels are minimal now." Novali nodded, already gathering the few possessions she had, the tablet, some dried fruits she preserved, a small piece of her ship's hull that shimmered with the same opalescent quality as her skin. "Dash," she said as he prepared to leave, "my people have saying, stars whisper to those who listen across worlds. You listened when others would not." Something in her words touched him deeply. He'd spent his life following rules, believing in systems, until Europa showed him how flawed those systems could be. Now, helping this alien being felt more right than anything he'd done in years. "We'll leave tomorrow night," he told her. "I'll create a distraction at the main power relay. Should give us a few hours while they deal with it." As he made the long trek back to the colony under the alien stars, Dash realized with perfect clarity that he was now committed to a path he would never have imagined weeks ago. Whatever existed between him and Novali, this impossible connection across species and worlds, had become worth any risk. And in the colony ahead, lights moved in patterns that suggested the search was intensifying. Time was running out. Dawn broke over the terraformed sectors of Proxima Centauri B in waves of crimson and amber. Dash Meridian stood at the viewport of Monitoring Station 4, watching the colony come to life in the distance. It would be his last day as a law-abiding colonial citizen, though no one else knew that yet. The previous night, he had meticulously prepared for what would come next, requisitioning extra oxygen canisters for extended monitoring, downloading terrain maps to his personal device, and quietly collecting rations that wouldn't be missed from the communal storage. Each action seemingly innocent alone, but together forming a plan of escape. "Meridian." The voice over his comm made him flinch. "Report to Security Station Alpha immediately." Dash took a deep breath, composing himself. "Acknowledged. On my way." As he steered his rover back toward the colony, he rehearsed his responses to the questions he knew would come. The security chief, Warden Ellis, was thorough but not particularly imaginative in his interrogation techniques. Still, with the colony on high alert for an alien presence, any slip could be disastrous. The security station was a squat, utilitarian building near the colony's center, distinguished from other structures only by the reinforced door and surveillance equipment. Inside, the air felt heavy with tension. Meridian. Warden Ellis nodded curtly from behind his desk. Behind him stood Director Harlow, her thin lips pressed into a line of disapproval. "We have some questions about your movements over the past 3 weeks." "I've been following my regular monitoring schedule," Dash replied with rehearsed casualness. "Everything's documented in my daily reports." Ellis activated a holographic display showing a map of the northern quadrant. Red dots indicated Dash's rover movements, forming a pattern that clearly showed multiple trips to the same remote area, near the emergency shelter. "You've made 17 trips to this region," Ellis said. "An area with no active monitoring equipment or terraforming units. Care to explain?" Dash had prepared for this. "Soil sampling. I've been tracking mineral reclamation rates in sectors affected by the early detonation failures. It's all in my supplementary research logs. Which conveniently aren't part of the mandatory review protocols," Director Harlow interjected. "Science rarely follows administrative schedules, Director," Dash replied, allowing a note of the academic's frustration with bureaucracy to color his tone. "The data is available if you'd like to review it." Ellis and Harlow exchanged glances. "We'd like to see those logs immediately," Ellis said. Dash pulled out his tablet and called up a series of genuine soil analysis reports he'd been compiling as cover. The data was real. He'd actually done the work to ensure his story would hold up, but the motivation he'd ascribed to it was not. As Ellis reviewed the information, a third person entered the room, Jana Weller, the terraforming technician who had questioned Dash after the colony meeting. "You asked to see me, Director," she said, then stopped short upon seeing Dash. "Yes," Harlow nodded. "Technician Weller, you filed a report noting unusual atmospheric readings in Sector 11 2 days ago. Did you investigate further?" Jana's eyes flickered toward Dash before returning to the director. "Yes, ma'am. I found trace elements consistent with non-colony equipment having been operated in the area. Possibly an unauthorized environment suit or portable shelter." Dash kept his expression neutral while his mind raced. Sector 11 was nowhere near the emergency shelter or the mining excavation he'd planned to move Novali to. Was Jana throwing them off track intentionally? "And your conclusion?" Harlow pressed. "Most likely someone conducting unauthorized experiments," Jana said. "The radiation warning beacons in that sector have been malfunctioning. Someone might be taking advantage of the reduced oversight." Ellis turned his attention back to Dash. "Meridian, have you observed any unusual activity in your quadrant? Anything at all that might suggest the presence of the alien or human accomplices?" "Nothing beyond what I initially reported at the crash site," Dash answered, maintaining eye contact. "But I'll remain vigilant." The questioning continued for another 30 minutes, but eventually Ellis seemed satisfied with Dash's explanations. As he was dismissed, Jana fell into step beside him in the corridor. "They're watching you," she murmured, not looking at him directly. "Ellis has assigned a shadow detail to track your movements." Dash kept walking, processing this unexpected warning. "Why are you telling me this?" Jana's voice dropped even lower. "Europa Station. You tried to warn them about the oxygen system. My brother was one of the 27 who died when management ignored you." The revelation hit Dash like a physical blow. He stopped, turning to face her fully. "I didn't know." "No reason you would," she replied. "But I've been watching you since you arrived. You're a good man, Meridian. Whatever you're involved in now. I suspect you have good reasons." Before he could respond, she continued walking, raising her voice to normal levels. "Don't forget to recalibrate your atmospheric sensors. The readings in Sector 9 have been fluctuating." The message was clear, their conversation was over, at least where anyone might overhear. Dash returned to his rover, mind racing with this new development. A shadow detail would make executing his plan nearly impossible, but Jana's unexpected alliance offered possibilities. As he drove toward his monitoring station, he carefully observed the traffic behind him. Sure enough, a maintenance vehicle maintained a consistent distance, changing direction whenever he did. He spent the day performing routine tasks, giving no indication that he knew he was being watched or that anything unusual was planned. As evening approached, he transmitted his daily reports and prepared to return to the colony. It was then that the alarm sounded, a colony-wide alert that blared through every communication channel. "Attention all personnel," Director Harlow's voice echoed across the comms. "Proximity sensors have detected an approaching vessel of unknown origin entering orbit. All colonists are to return to designated shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Dash's heart sank. Another ship, could it be more of Novali's people arriving despite her scout report not being transmitted? Or something else entirely? He quickly changed course, heading not toward the colony but in the direction of the emergency shelter. If another alien vessel was arriving, Novali needed to know. The shadow detail would surely report his deviation, but the colony-wide emergency might provide just enough confusion to give him time. As he drove, the sky darkened prematurely, not with nightfall, but with the looming shadow of a vessel unlike any he'd seen before. Unlike Novali's sleek, iridescent craft, this ship was angular and predatory, its hull a dull, light-absorbing black. It descended with deliberate precision, landing not far from the original crash site. Dash abandoned his rover behind a ridge, continuing on foot to maintain some cover. Through his binoculars, he watched as a hatch opened in the dark vessel and a figure emerged. Even from a distance, Dash could tell this being was not of Novali's species. Where she was slender and graceful, this creature was broad and powerful, its movements suggesting both strength and purpose. A helmet obscured its features, but something about its bearing sent a primal warning through Dash's nervous system. This was a hunter. Novali sensed the arrival before any human alert sounded. Her tendrils flared to a pale, ashen color as she felt the distinctive energy signature of a Vexari ship entering the atmosphere. The Vexari, mercenary trackers who had aligned themselves with the faction of Lumini who opposed seeking refuge among other species. They believed that integration would dilute their culture, that adaptation to new worlds would eventually erase what made them Lumini. Better to continue their nomadic existence among the stars than settle among lesser species. Novali had broken from this conservative faction, volunteering as a scout to find worlds where peaceful coexistence might be possible. Her mission was considered treasonous by the traditionalists, who had apparently sent a Vexari hunter to find her. She gathered her few possessions, knowing she couldn't stay in the shelter. The hunter would have tracking capabilities that far exceeded human technology. Her only advantage was her knowledge of the terrain from studying Dash's maps. As she slipped out into the rusty landscape, Novali reached out with senses humans would not understand, perceiving energy patterns, radiation fluctuations, the subtle vibrations of approaching machinery. The hunter had landed and was already moving, its path unmistakably directed toward the colony. Not toward her current location, but toward the humans. Toward Dash. The realization sent her tendrils shifting to deep crimson alarm. The hunter was tracking her through her connection to Dash, the unique energy signature that formed between beings who shared strong emotional bonds. In her species, such bonds created actual energetic links that the highly sensitive could detect. The Vexari hunter would use Dash to find her. Decision made, Novali changed direction. Instead of fleeing toward the mining excavation as planned, she moved toward the colony. If the hunter wanted her, she would not allow Dash to be caught in the middle. Jana Weller intercepted Dash before he could reach the emergency shelter. "Are you insane?" she hissed, stepping out from behind an outcropping of rocks. "Security is looking everywhere for you. Ellis thinks you're meeting the alien." "I am," Dash admitted, seeing no point in denying it now. "But not how he thinks. Jana, I need your help. That ship, it's not friendly." Jana's expression shifted from alarm to resigned acceptance. I figured as much when I saw its approach vector. Too precise for a first contact, too aggressive for a peaceful visit. She gestured toward her own rover, hidden nearby. I've jammed the tracking signals on both our vehicles, but it won't last long. How did you find me? I've been monitoring your actual movements, not the falsified data I fed to security. At his surprised look, she added, like I said, my brother died at Europa. I've made it my business to know what really happens in this colony. Before Dash could respond, movement caught his attention, a figure approaching from the direction of the emergency shelter. Novali. Jana followed his gaze, eyes widening at her first sight of the alien. That's her. Novali reached them, her tendrils swirling with urgent patterns of deep red and purple. Dash, danger comes. Hunter from my world. Her gaze shifted to Jana, tendrils flaring with alarm. She's a friend, Dash assured her quickly. Jana, this is Novali. Novali, Jana has been helping us without my knowledge. The hunter seeks me, Novali continued, her English clipped with urgency. We'll find through you. Our connection creates energy the Vexery can track. What connection? Jana asked, glancing between them. Dash felt heat rise to his face but didn't answer. Whatever existed between him and Novali defied simple explanation, especially now. We need to move, he said instead. If this hunter can track us, we need to get as far from the colony as possible. Not possible, Novali's tendrils shifted to a deep blue tinged with black, a color Dash had never seen her display before. Hunter will find. Vexery never stop. Must confront. That's suicide, Dash protested. We need to hide, to plan. Jana, who had been monitoring her portable scanner, suddenly tensed. Whatever we do, we need to do it now. Colony security vehicles are heading this way, fast. The three of them quickly retreated to a narrow ravine that offered some concealment. Jana's scanner showed multiple approaching signals, both from the colony and from the direction of the alien ship. They're converging on our position, she reported grimly. We're about to be caught between colonial security and whatever that thing is that came out of the black ship. Novali's tendrils had settled into a steady, pulsing pattern of deep purple. I must surrender to Hunter. Only way to save you both. Absolutely not, Dash said firmly. We'll find another way. But time had run out. The whine of approaching rovers grew louder, and from the opposite direction came a low, pulsing sound that seemed to vibrate through the very rock around them. The hunter comes, Novali whispered, her tendrils pale with fear despite her resolved expression. Jana checked her weapon, a standard-issue colony defense pistol. I've got 6 shots. Won't do much against colony security, and probably nothing against whatever's hunting us. Dash made a split-second decision. Jana, take Novali to the mining excavation in Sector 12. I'll lead the hunter away. No. Novali grasped his arm, her touch sending warmth through his suit despite the desperate situation. The hunter will kill you. Easily. I'm not asking permission, Dash replied, gently removing her hand. Jana, the excavation has lead deposits that might mask life signs. It's your best chance. Jana nodded grimly, understanding the logic even if she didn't like it. What about you? I'll head toward Terraforming Station 6. It has an emergency beacon. If I can activate it, it might confuse both the hunter's tracking and colony security. Before either could object further, Dash pressed a small object into Novali's hand, a data crystal containing everything he'd learned about her language and culture over their weeks together. So humans will understand, if I don't make it back, he explained. The moment stretched between them, filled with all the things neither had fully expressed. Then Dash turned to Jana. Go. Now. As Jana led Novali toward the mining excavation, Dash moved in the opposite direction, making sure to leave obvious tracks. The sky had darkened completely now, Proxima Centauri's reddish light fading as the planet rotated. In the growing shadows, Dash activated his suit lights deliberately, a beacon for anything hunting him. He had covered perhaps half the distance to Station 6 when he heard it, a sound like metal scraping against stone, rhythmic and purposeful. Dash turned slowly to face what followed. The hunter stood perhaps 20 meters away, its form massive in the dim light. Now without its helmet, Dash could see its features, vaguely reptilian, with multiple small eyes arranged in a pattern across a broad, armored face. It carried what appeared to be a weapon, though unlike any human design. Human, the creature spoke, its voice a rumbling vibration that Dash felt as much as heard. "Where is the Lumini scout?" The fact that it spoke English shocked Dash momentarily. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, playing for time. The hunter advanced a few steps, moving with surprising grace for its bulk. "Your biological signature carries traces of Lumini energy transfer. You have been in intimate contact with the fugitive." Dash felt his face warm at the implication but maintained his composure. "I'm just a terraforming technician. Whatever readings you're getting must be a mistake." The hunter raised its weapon. "The Lumini have a saying, truth reflects in the spectrum of life. Your deception is transparent." A blast of energy struck the ground near Dash's feet, sending fragments of rock flying. He dove for cover behind an outcropping, mind racing for options. "The Lumini scout carries forbidden knowledge," the hunter continued, advancing steadily. "Her kind believes integration with species like yours is possible. This is a corruption of our sacred isolation. She must be returned for cleansing." "Cleansing?" Dash called out, moving position as quietly as possible. "You mean execution." "Purification," the hunter corrected. "The Lumini remain pure by remaining separate. Those who seek connection with lesser beings contaminate our collective essence." The hunter was close now, its multiple eyes scanning methodically. Dash knew he couldn't evade it much longer. His only hope was to keep it focused on him, giving Jana and Novali time to reach safety. "What if she's right?" Dash challenged, moving again to draw the hunter's attention. "What if connection with other species strengthens rather than weakens?" The hunter paused, its weapon lowering slightly. "You speak of matters beyond your comprehension, human. The energy link between you and the scout, it is unstable, temporary. A biological aberration that mimics true connection." Something in the hunter's tone suggested not just duty, but personal conviction, perhaps even jealousy. Dash seized on this, remembering Novali's explanation of how emotional bonds created energy patterns her people could sense. "It's real," Dash insisted, stepping partially into view. "What exists between us isn't contamination, it's evolution. Adaptation. Exactly what her people need to survive." The hunter's reaction was swift and violent. A blast of energy much closer this time, forcing Dash to roll painfully across sharp rocks. "Pollution of the sacred essence," the hunter growled. "You confirm your guilt. The scout has indeed formed a prohibited bond. Where is she?" Dash scrambled to his feet, realizing too late that the hunter had been herding him away from cover. He stood exposed now on the rusty plain, the massive alien advancing with weapon raised. "I'll find her with or without your cooperation," the hunter said. "Your suffering is optional." Dash tensed, preparing for pain or worse, when suddenly the night lit up with the beam of powerful lights. Colony security rovers crested a nearby ridge, spotlights sweeping over the scene. "Attention unidentified entities." Warden Ellis's voice boomed through an amplified speaker. "You are in violation of colonial territory. Stand down immediately." The hunter swiveled with alarming speed, its weapon now targeting the approaching security forces. The first energy blast struck the lead rover, sending it flipping end over end in a spectacular display of power. Chaos erupted as colonial security returned fire, their weapons pitifully inadequate against the hunter's technology. Dash used the confusion to dive for cover, but not before seeing Ellis and several security officers thrown clear of their vehicles. The hunter methodically disabled the colonial forces, its movements precise and unhurried. When the last rover lay smoking and the remaining officers had scattered for cover, it turned its attention back to Dash. "The interference is eliminated," it stated matter-of-factly. "Now, human, you will lead me to the scout." Dash stood slowly, mind racing. He couldn't outrun or outfight this creature. His only remaining weapon was information, and deception. "She's already gone," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "Left the planet on an automated emergency vessel. Your pursuit is pointless." The hunter studied him with its multiple eyes. "Unlikely. Her ship was damaged beyond repair." "Not her ship," Dash countered. "A human vessel. We helped her escape." For the first time, the hunter seemed uncertain. It activated some device on its armored wrist, scanning the sky as if seeking confirmation. It was the opening Dash needed. He lunged for Ellis's fallen weapon, a colonial heavy stunner that lay just within reach. The hunter reacted instantly, but Dash had already rolled away, bringing the weapon up and firing in one desperate motion. The stunner's charge struck the hunter squarely but seemed to do little more than irritate it. However, the momentary distraction allowed Dash to sprint toward a narrow ravine where the hunter's bulk would be at a disadvantage. "Futile," the hunter called after him. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm me." But Dash wasn't aiming to harm, only to delay. Each minute he kept the hunter occupied was another minute for Jana and Novali to reach safety. He scrambled through the ravine, using his knowledge of the terrain to stay just ahead of his pursuer. The hunter was powerful but not built for the tight spaces and sharp turns of the eroded landscape. Dash emerged onto a plateau that overlooked a particularly active terraforming zone, an area where atmospheric converters pumped specially engineered microbes into the air and soil. The machines worked day and night, transforming the alien environment into something more hospitable to human life. And they were highly unstable if damaged. The hunter emerged from the ravine behind him, its patience clearly wearing thin. "Enough evasion, human. The scout's energy signature grows stronger. She approaches." Dash turned in alarm and saw what the hunter had already detected, two figures running across the rusty plain below. Jana and Novali had not gone to the mining excavation as planned, but were instead heading straight toward him. "No," he shouted, waving them away. "Run. The other direction." But they continued forward, Novali's tendrils streaming behind her like banner. Even at a distance, Dash could see they had shifted to that deep rose color with gold tips, the color she had said meant connection, bond between souls. The hunter followed his gaze and made a sound like grinding metal, satisfaction. As predicted. The contaminated always returned to their contaminants. It raised its weapon, aiming not at Dash but at the approaching figures. In that moment, time seemed to slow for Dash. He saw the weapon powering up, saw the energy gathering at its muzzle. He saw Jana and Novali still too far away to reach cover. He saw the atmospheric converter barely 10 meters from where he stood, its housing containing volatile compounds that, if released suddenly, would create a localized but powerful explosive reaction. Dash had spent his career understanding the science of terraforming, the delicate balance of chemicals, the precise application of energy. Now he would use that knowledge for destruction. He fired Ellis's stunner not at the hunter, but at the atmospheric converter's main pressure valve. The concentrated energy struck perfectly, rupturing the mechanism and releasing a cloud of reactive compounds. "Down," he shouted to Jana and Novali, though they were still too distant to hear. The hunter, realizing Dash's intent too late, swiveled its weapon toward him instead. But the atmospheric converter was already beginning its catastrophic failure, pressure building in seconds rather than releasing gradually as designed. The explosion when it came was both more violent and more beautiful than Dash had anticipated. A wave of energy expanded outward in a perfect circle, its edges tinged with the chemical compounds reacting with the atmosphere. The force struck Dash first, lifting him off his feet and flinging him backward like a doll. The hunter, larger and more directly in the path of the blast, was thrown much further, its armored body tumbling across the landscape. Its weapon, dislodged by the impact, skittered away across the rocks. Dash landed hard, the breath driven from his lungs. Pain blossomed across his body, and the faceplate of his environment suit was cracked, allowing the thin Proxima air to seep in. He struggled to move, to see what had happened to the hunter, to find Jana and Novali. Through blurring vision, he saw the hunter rising, injured but far from defeated. It moved with a new deliberation toward its fallen weapon, golden fluid leaking from joints in its armor. Then, entering his fading field of view, Novali appeared. She stood facing the hunter, her tendrils extended fully and pulsing with colors Dash had never seen her display, deep violet streaked with silver, shifting to blazing white at the tips. The hunter stopped its advance, multiple eyes fixed on Novali. A sound like grinding machinery emanated from it, a language Dash couldn't understand. Novali responded, her melodic voice now carrying tones that seemed to vibrate the very air. Dash struggled to remain conscious, aware that his damaged suit was allowing too much of Proxima's atmosphere into his lungs. Jana appeared beside him, her face tight with concern as she quickly applied an emergency seal to his faceplate. What are they saying?" he managed to ask. Jana shook her head. "I don't know. But she's standing her ground." The exchange between hunter and hunted continued, growing more intense. The hunter had retrieved its weapon but held it at its side, apparently engaged in the debate. Novali's tendrils continued their dramatic display, colors shifting in patterns that even Dash, with his weeks of observation, had never witnessed. "She's winning," Jana murmured, watching the confrontation. "Whatever argument they're having, she's gaining ground." Finally, the hunter made a gesture that seemed both dismissive and reluctant. It activated a device on its wrist, and its black ship, which had remained at the landing site, suddenly rose into the air without apparent propulsion. The ship moved with eerie silence until it hovered directly overhead. A beam of dark light, less an illumination than a removal of light, extended downward, enveloping the hunter. In moments, it had been drawn upward into the vessel. The ship ascended rapidly, becoming a diminishing point of darkness against the night sky, and then vanished completely. Novali turned and ran to where Dash lay, her tendrils now a riot of colors, concern, relief, joy all blending together. She knelt beside him, hands gentle as they helped Jana stabilize his damaged suit. "You must reach medical facility," she said urgently, examining his injuries. "Internal damage likely." What did you say to it?" Dash asked, fighting to stay conscious. Novali's tendrils settled into the deep rose color he had come to recognize. "I showed truth. Our bond, not contamination but evolution. Shared truth from many worlds that isolation brings only death. That adaptation requires connection." Jana looked up from tending Dash's wounds. "And it just left? After all that?" "Vexery honor truth when irrefutable," Novali explained. "I opened my mind fully, showed memories, knowledge forbidden to share. Knowledge that will now spread among my people." She touched Dash's face gently. "Your willingness to sacrifice, it proved what I claimed. That connection between species brings strength, not weakness." Dash managed a weak smile despite the pain flooding through him. "So I blew up a terraforming converter for nothing? Could have just had a philosophical debate instead." Novali's laugh was like chiming crystals. "No, Dash Meridian. Your action made debate possible. Showed devotion that Hunter could not deny." Jana cleared her throat. "This reunion is touching, but we have colony security regrouping and a man with significant injuries. We need to move." As they helped Dash to his feet, supporting him between them, the sound of approaching rovers grew louder. But these were not the aggressive approach of security vehicles, these moved with cautious deliberation. A familiar voice called out from the lead rover. "Meridian. Weller. Hold position." Director Harlow emerged from the vehicle, accompanied not by security forces but by a mixed group of colonial scientists and administrators. Her expression as she took in the scene, the damaged terraforming converter, the injured terraforming specialist, and most significantly, the alien being supporting him, was one of stunned reassessment. "We monitored the encounter," she said, her usual clipped tone subdued. "The alien ship's communications were intercepted. Translated. We heard everything." Dash, struggling to remain upright between Jana and Novali, managed a pained smile. "Then you know she's not a threat. That she came here seeking peaceful connection." Harlow nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on Novali with what appeared to be reluctant wonder. "The Colony Council is reconsidering our first contact protocols in light of this incident." Jana snorted. "You mean now that you've seen what actually hostile aliens look like, you're rethinking your shoot-first policy?" "Something like that," Harlow admitted with uncharacteristic humility. She gestured to the medical personnel who had accompanied her. "Get Meridian to the medical center immediately. And..." She hesitated, looking at Novali, his companion as well. As they were helped into the medical transport, Dash felt Novali's hand find his, her touch warm and reassuring through his damaged glove. Her tendrils had settled into that deep rose color with gold tips, the color of connection, of bonds that transcended species. "Worth the risk," he murmured, echoing the words she had used weeks ago when describing her mission. Novali's response was to intertwine her fingers more firmly with his, a human gesture she had learned from him, just as he had learned to read the colors of her emotions. As the transport carried them back toward the colony, not as fugitives but as honored guests, Dash realized that they had both been transformed by their encounter. The hunter had called it contamination. Novali had called it evolution. Dash simply called it love, a force that, like the tendrils of light from distant stars, could whisper truth across the void between worlds.